Star Wars. You and your children loved it. Now, the Earthlings at Kenner have asked my associate and me to present the Star Wars collection. Truly remarkable toys and games for your children. What are you so excited about now? My goodness, the Star Wars TIE Fighter and X-Wing fighter. Now your children can relive our great space battles or collect our wonderful Star Wars companions with Kenner's Star Wars action figures. R2, it's a little you. Kenner's new radio-controlled R2-D2 anyone can command. The Star Wars land speeder that moves like it's floating. And here's Kenner's Death Star space station, 4 floors of action. A trash compactor, too. Listen, R2, that's the Star Wars electronic laser battle, a game of speed, reflex, and reaction. These and other toys and games in Kenner's Star Wars collection are sold separately. Batteries are not included. May the Force be with you and your children.
Welcome, Masters and Padawans, to episode 576 of Full of Sith. I am Holly Fry, and not Brian Young, who usually does this intro. He's under the weather this week, which means Holly gets to do what she wants, which could mean any kind of crazy thing. But this week, we have a returning guest who is one of my favorite guests of all time for very selfish reasons. The fantastic, my beloved Brian Fry.
Not Brian Young. I am Brian Fry this time.
Yeah, there's so many Brians. The Brians and Ryans of my life are like abundant. It's really, you guys got to come up with a system.
I think I said before it's spelled the correct way with an I.
I'm not getting in the middle of that.
Hello.
The first time you were on the show, my darling love, we talked about San Diego Comic-Con, but we also talked a lot about toys because that's kind of like your jam.
My wheelhouse.
Yeah, in Star Wars.
Hot
and it's
Wheels
what you
house.
were talking about at San Diego Comic-Con as well.
Yes.
So to build on that, because we both love toys a lot, but I feel like we have very different takes on like the things we love for the most part. I thought it would be fun if we each compiled a top 10 list of our favorite Star Wars toys. And we specified in discussion that it was not necessarily the top 10 best Star Wars toys, but our favorites. And I did for me, but not necessarily for you. My personal rule was that it has to be something officially produced. And I focused on toys, not collectibles. Did you do anything like that for yourself?
I did similar, yes. I kind of tried to narrow it down to what could be bought on a toy store shelf, if those still existed. So agreed, not necessarily collectibles, because I'm thinking like what you might take out to the backyard with. So, like we've been lucky enough to collect some Hot Toys figures, the 1/6 scale, like really high-end, nice figures, which are action figures, and toys is in the company name, but you wouldn't take these out back and play with them. You wouldn't let your kid play with them, probably. So I
Yeah.
did not include those, even though we have like a couple of cool ones that I really liked.
Me either. I thought about including the one that I have that I love and treasure. But then I was like, I don't play with it. I look at it. So that doesn't feel like a
Yeah,
toy to me.
they're art. Instead of marble statues, they're little plastic statues.
Yeah, they're beautiful. They're
Mhm.
beautiful. So all right, do you want to kick this off and tell me? I will also say my list, there's no actual superlative order. There's not one that's like, this is my favorite one because that changes day to day. But these are
Agreed.
10 of my
Mine
favorites.
is not a countdown either.
Great.
Um, sure. I think you knew this would be a thinker of a question of a topic because like we've been collecting Star Wars toys for 47 years, like
You hush.
since they have been around.
Yeah.
Um, Although uh, I only just realized that when I met you, I hadn't even been collecting them for 20 years at that point.
Okay.
I mean, everybody out there probably knows infamously they didn't start producing Star Wars toys when A New Hope was in theaters in 77.
Right.
At Christmas time, Kenner uh, made available a box of promises.
An empty box.
Um, and then toys didn't start coming out until 78. So that's when I first
Yeah.
started collecting Star Wars. Although at the time I was
You were
eight or nine.
playing, not collecting.
Yeah, I was 8 or 9 years old. I didn't have it in my brain to go, I'm setting this aside. Like I want to keep this nice so I can, display it when I'm middle aged.
Right. We were acquiring. We weren't collecting.
Yeah. I mean, I played with mine. I'm an opener.
Me
I
too.
take my stuff out of the box and I mean even now as an adult who doesn't take them outside to play necessarily. Um, I do still take them out
Yeah,
because, like you said, we like to look at them. They provide fun memories.
they do. So yeah, kick us off. Tell me what was the first thing you wrote down?
Um, the first thing I wrote down, well, like you, I was trying to narrow the list because we have been collecting for so long, and I decided just to kind of start with the movies, kind of start with what was first available, and then expand from there. So my first three, I'm just going to stick to the movies, the original trilogy. Um, so, A New Hope has the most nostalgic stuff because those were the first ones that came out. The first ones I collected, they
Yeah,
imprinted in my brain as a kid. So there's a lot from A New Hope that I still love, and I actually do still have a lot of them. Not all were completely destroyed. But my choices for the first three movies don't really, they didn't really come with like any kind of deliberation. Um, I kind of knew what I would pick. For instance, A New Hope, my number one there is the Falcon, the Millennium Falcon.
yeah.
It was big. It was like a vehicle and a play set, and you could fit more than one figure in there, and it was small enough that even a 9-year-old kid could fly it around the room. Um, so definitely the Falcon, even though everything from A New Hope was a first time Star Wars toy for me.
Right. But that's a good one. I think it's interesting because you and we did not talk to each other at all about our lists. We did not consult, contrast, etc. But we kind of approached them the same way. Where the first couple of things on my list are from those early figures that were like formative for me. So I don't think it will surprise you or anyone when I say the green on green Greedo figure.
Oh, of course.
Um, it was just so cool to hold it in my little hand and be like, this is the weird alien that made me think about how humans could live alongside aliens and how cool that would be. Um, I will out you slightly in the sweetest way and tell listeners that Brian often goes to toy shows. Sometimes I go with him, sometimes I'm just busy and can't. But what he will usually do is paw through the like bins of loose figures and he will buy me up a bunch of rescue Greedos all the time. So those old ones, some of which are beat up, and you can get them for $1 or $2 to $5 or whatever. He'll come home with a bouquet of Greedos.
The least chewed on.
Right. The least chewed on. Um, yeah, I just it makes me happy every time I look at it. I also just even though it does not look like Greedo looked in the movies, right? The color choices are completely off, etc. But I actually really love that design, that green on green design. And I know they did it in animation, right during the last season of Clone Wars. We saw an homage to that figure in his green on green. I would love to see a live action Rhodian that has the green on green clothing. That would make me so happy in my dark little heart.
You've never
Uh,
made that costume.
no, I'm not built right to do a Rhodian costume. I have too much hip. I got too much badonk for it. Too much badonk and bust. What is your second one?
So going on to Empire Strikes Back. Without question, again, the Snowspeeder. Like the
I knew
AT-ATs,
this was coming.
the AT-ATs great, or AT-ATs. Hey, find us full of Sith on social media and tell us how you pronounce that name. Um,
We always say both are correct.
I love all of the Hoth stuff. I just love winter geared
Yeah,
figures in general, G.I. Joe, whatever franchise. Um, I like the winter gear stuff, but the the snow speeder I actually played with. Like I took to places and played with it there.
yeah,
Um, and it's a kind of a simple shape. It's like straight, you know, planes, and it's kind of a wedge thing, but I don't know, just something about it. It was such an image in the movie, and then played the integral part in finding Han and Luke, and
yeah.
um, I don't know, it just really stuck with me.
Was
So yeah,
that your item when your mom would say, we're going to place X and you can take one toy? Was that the one you always grabbed?
probably. Like every summer, for 2 weeks, we would go to my in-laws, my parents' in-laws' places in Kentucky, my grandparents' places. Uh, and I would pack one entire suitcase of toys. And as time went on, it got a little mixed, but yeah, at the very beginning, I definitely packed the snow speeder in there.
I mean, I like that even as adults we sometimes do this, right?
Yeah.
We packed action figures when we went to Hawaii so we could get Scarif scenes. We packed action figures on our recent trip to Iceland because we knew we were going to go to filming locations in Vic and take
Yep.
pictures there. Sometimes they still make it in.
You may have
Um,
seen me on the beach in Pensacola as, I don't know, what was that, 10 or 11 years old?
I wasn't
11-ish, 11 or 12. You may have seen me on the white sandy beach with a snow scooter, like crashing it into the sand and taking pictures of because it wasn't
maybe.
snowy in Georgia where I grew up usually. So
Yeah.
that was the closest I got to playing in snow.
Yeah, for context to what Brian just said, um, I moved when I was 9 to the Gulf Coast, and his aunts had um a beach house there that was not far from where I was grew up from that point on. So there's every possibility that we did cross over on the beach, but we didn't meet until much later. Um, Here's my second one. I'm sticking with the action figures. And it's still A New Hope, and it's Moma Nadon or
Okay.
Nadon, however people want to say it. But this is another one where part of the charm is that the outfit is so wrong. And it established the idea of Moma Nadon, the beautiful Ithorian, wore a turquoise leotard.
A onesie. We knew
I
him back
love the
then.
idea of him in the cantina in his spandex just having a cocktail.
He just got off work from Cirque du Soleil or something.
Right. Taught
Um,
an aerobics class.
Now we knew him as what back then?
Then he was Hammerhead.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think any of the ones where he had that outfit were labeled Hammerhead, but now I retrofit the name on. Um, because I love him. I love him. What is your number three, sir?
Um, I was gonna say I loved uh back on Empire Boba Fett's ship FX7. I loved Han and Luke's outfits, Tiny Yoda, but the Snowspeeder beats all those for sure.
Yeah. So
So
now we're on to Jedi.
third one I had a little bit of a question about if I'm sticking to movies,
Okay.
since that brings us to Return of the Jedi. And the question is the sail barge. I didn't know if HasLab stuff should be included because,
Oh,
like, I didn't grow up with guilt trippy parents, but there's a voice in the back of my head, regardless. Like, you better list that as your favorite toy, because the HasLab stuff are premium things, elaborate, highly detailed. They're supposed to be like the best toy you've ever had. So I didn't know if
If it
we should
qualified.
exclude that and keep to my idea of what you could buy on toy store shelves. So
Um,
the sail barge would be like without a doubt, again, no question, um, my favorite from Return of the Jedi. But for purchased off of a store shelf, the speeder bike and biker scout, any scale, vintage scale,
oh
Black
yeah.
Series, the big 1/6 scale Hasbro. We don't have the high end like Hot Toys one. Um, I love the biker scout costume that I have. So if not the sail barge, then absolutely, again, without question, speeder bike, biker scout. Love that design. Love the look of it. It's a tiny little toy, but I loved it as a kid.
I also remember when they released the 1/6 scale speeder bike and biker scout when we were already married and there was so much excitement.
Yes.
I was gonna tell you though that I think HasLab stuff can qualify. I have one on my list because they're still playable withable. That's a phrase that's real, right?
Mhm.
It is today. But I won't do that one yet because my next one is
Your third one is,
yeah,
she's laughing.
um, which will again surprise no one. Custom droids from Droid Depot. Like you can't pick
Uh-huh.
one. Obviously, I have the rabies for those things. Like it was the first thing I did the first time I went to Galaxy's Edge, which you were not even there for. Um, and I have made so many on subsequent visits. But I really do think, and I am speaking specifically, there are a lot of cool droids that are pre-built you can buy in Droid Depot, obviously, but there is something so magical and fun about picking out parts and building your droid. Even now, as I have gotten to the point where I know I'm building something to paint it later and customize it, I still just love that like act of creation. There's something so sweet about it. And I love that you get to create something that's in the Star Wars universe, but is yours and yours alone. And I love that it doesn't matter that, like, I am a middle-aged woman going in there. The cast members still go through all the paces of the fun stuff and, like, let's activate your droid. I love all of it. It's so sweet and magical to me. Um, and I love that size. I love they're like our kids. You're probably wishing I loved them a hair less because they
No.
do take up a lot of space in the house, but they just make me giggle with delight every time.
Yeah, they're an experience. They are an experience-based joy.
Yeah. Yeah, I will say I didn't I I don't know if you did. I did not put like the custom sabers on my list, even though I love those. But what I'm there for is just the experience more than the saber itself. Like I'm not playing with those a lot at home, but I will when I'm just sitting around, turn on a droid and turn on the remote and play around and make it run and tweet.
Yeah, I kind of threw those in with the collectibles, like
Yeah.
exclusion. Because I do love the sabers. I love the helmets. The helmets from Hasbro that are around the $100 give or take. Great detail. Some of them have lights. I think all or most of them have sound effects, and they look really, really good for that amount, considering like they usually are 5 or 6 times as expensive through
Yeah.
like replica places.
Yeah.
But yeah, I tried to keep it to, like I said, the toy store shelves, like vehicles or figures.
I do have a question for you that's related to my Droid Depot one that I hope isn't spoiling your list. Did you by any chance put the Droid Factory droids on your list?
They are kind of a slot number 11. If I were to go beyond, because the Disney
Your
park,
honorable mentions
yeah,
list?
honorable mentions exactly. The Disney parks figures that they've put out have been just as fun, and they do multi-packs of the Droid Factory from movies. But like your experience with building a droid, I loved building the vintage scale ones that they
Yeah.
had. They didn't have any kind of, electronics or activation moments, but I did love, and it's discontinued now. I think it went away before COVID.
Yeah, I
But
think
anyway,
so.
it's discontinued now, where at a few locations throughout the parks, they had tables with several bins of torsos and limbs and even little hats you could put on them, um, to be silly. And then you'd package them up in a bubble carded thing, and you had an action figure that you made. I do love those, but I didn't include those as any of my favorites.
Yeah, and you could do an astromech or a protocol droid for those. But I mention them only because this has always been a source of fascination for me. I love droids, and I made a couple of those, but I was not hyper obsessed with those. Whereas you have not ever had any real big interest in the Droid Depot scale droids, but you had like checklists and spreadsheets of every piece you could possibly get in the Droid Factory droids, and
Yes.
you were literally that was your Pokemon. Like you were trying to get every piece at some point.
Yeah, we were lucky enough to get to go to the parks more than once, and I was losing track of, do I have this head? I don't remember if I have the blue one. Do I have the red one? And I finally had to start keeping track.
Yeah, just fascinating. Do you want to give us your fourth one?
Sure. So after the original three movies, we're getting into 1984, 85. I'm like a teenager and other interests are happening. I'm heading into high school. So I wasn't collecting as much. In fact, I missed that final line. It's a legend at this point, but the figures that came with coins on cards,
Yeah.
I missed out on all those. I missed out on the Imperial shuttle, the shuttle Tidarium. Um, so I don't have really anything during the dock times. Um, so I want to also reiterate these aren't in any kind of order, just kind of a vague chronological. But my number four, there was a line, and we're still kind of sticking with the original trilogy. There was a line of concept art figures, Ralph McQuarrie concept art
Oh
figures
yeah.
that had it was pretty thorough, except for Leia, of course, um, including like I think Luke Starkiller was in there, and the Chewbacca is, of course, was turned into kind of the design for Zeb from
Yeah.
Rebels. Um, my favorite, my number four, is the concept Stormtrooper, because there was a piece of concept art that McQuarrie had done where there's a trooper in the foreground. What I loved about it was he had a shield and a laser sword. And he's like turning around and he spies the heroes down the hall behind him. They're not the main part of the art, but the look of him was great. The figure version of him is great. So, yeah, the McQuarrie figures in general I love, but the Stormtrooper specifically.
I love it. I'm gonna jump around my list. I didn't go in any kind of chronological order. After the earliest ones, I went all over the map. My next one I'm gonna mention is the Lego Cantina, like
Mm,
the big Lego Cantina set. For the obvious reason that I am Cantina obsessed and I love anywhere in Star Wars where they serve drinks. But that is just a really fun build, and I feel like it's a particularly ingenious design. because for anyone that hasn't ever built it or seen one in person, it kind of opens up like an old school playset so that you have access to the bar and the two side seating areas. But also, I just have fun memories to be gooey. That's like one of our date night things that we do is just we sit in our lounge and we build Lego together. And I had so much fun building that cantina with you. And it was just hilarious and delightful because it's all of the old school stuff that we first encountered when we were very tiny. And like just, coming across different minifigs and being like, ah, Cabe is here. Oh, look, it's obviously Greedo I was excited about, but all of them, it's just really fun. And I think it's a great set. Unfortunately, it's also one of those things that's super expensive, in terms of like price point for just buying a toy. The Lego stuff gets so pricey in a hurry. But I also feel like it's one of those things that if we ever got a wild hair and we were like, let's build it again, and we took ours all apart and started from scratch, I'd be okay with it because it's so much fun to put that one together.
Oh,
Please don't take it all apart, at least without telling me you're gonna, but
no. We actually had to get a little table just to display that one set on.
yes, because we love it so much. Cantina. All right, what's your number five, babe?
Um, I think it was during the dark times when Shadows of the Empire came out, yeah. With Prince Caesar
Yeah,
and all that. They are not on my list, but they're Kenner or did Hasbro had they bought them by then? Anyway,
I think they were Hasbro at that point, but
uh
I wouldn't quote me.
they were still trying, but I was not really into buying Star Wars toys until now I know we got the special edition in 97, is that right?
Yeah,
And with that the news that George is making a whole new trilogy.
yeah.
Um so that was exciting. I don't know that we jump back into collecting during special editions, but boy howdy, the prequels. Um, I think we blew rent at Toys R Us
We
when
did.
the Phantom Menace toys dropped.
We did.
And from the Phantom Menace collection, my number five is the Naboo Starfighter.
Oh, yeah, that N1 is beautiful.
It was so different from previous Star Wars toys. Like we grew up with the aesthetic of the lived-in universe, the scrappy
Yeah.
rebels and their, barely held together. The Falcon barely held together. The Empire was clean, but it was so, gray on black that you couldn't tell if there's any dirt, even if there was some. But the Starfighter was the first bright, clean, shiny Star Wars ship,
Yeah.
and it performed well in the movie. It looked great flying around. The toy looked great. Had sound and light effects. Um, and I think from that first brand new batch of Star Wars toys, I would pick the Starfighter.
I'm gonna ask you a question.
Yes,
Did you, at any point when considering that, dither over the Queen's starship?
that it's a very nice toy. It's another one of those that's also a play set. But I consider that as yours, really. It's
Oh,
on it's on my prequel toys shelf, but we didn't get that one when it first came out because it was like three figure, like 200
yeah.
bucks maybe. And then by Christmas, I think it was down to 50 or 60 or 70 bucks, something like that.
Yeah.
And then you were like, yoink,
Yeah,
'cause you wanted it.
I had to chuckle a little bit when you had mentioned like you weren't really collecting a whole lot before that. And part of me is like, babe, that's because we were super poor then. Like we were just
Yeah.
like young and trying to like get our footing under us, and there wasn't a lot of money for toy extravaganzas. So it was a huge deal that we were like, we're just going to completely indulge our inner children on Force Friday for the episode one toy drop and just throw all caution to the wind. It was the grabbiest hands experience. The dopamine firing in my brain was spectacular.
Mhm.
Um, And then we had to be real, real careful with money for a while.
Yeah. I
But
mean,
it was worth every penny.
that was that was my fault. You were always gainfully employed, and I think I was at WebMD at the time, so we had a Phantom Menace party at the library, I think.
We did.
Um, but then I was made redundant soon after because they
Meh,
were
no
growing so
worries,
much.
no
But
worries.
yeah.
Um, my next one is another one that will surprise no one. Actually, you know what? I'm going to come back to that one later. The next one I'm going to talk about is another vintage one, and this kind of breaks the rule of available on store shelves, but it is one of those magical and unique things, which is the mail away Empire Strikes Back action figure survival kit.
Oh, yes.
Oh, that's another instant dopamine release just thinking about it. This was, in case anyone doesn't remember, this amazing little kit. You could clip your proof of purchase panels from the back of your action figures and mail away for it. And I actually pulled a photograph earlier of the little ad insert for it. It had a Jedi training harness, a Hoth backpack, the Luke Skywalker AT-AT grappling hook belt, the asteroid gas masks, so the little masks they were wearing when they were inside the space slug, although they did not know that. And then my favorite, assorted laser weapons, just like a mess of guns. Um, and that was one that I remember getting it in the mail, and it came in the most nondescript little box, just a plain white, um, like a, it wasn't even cardboard. It was like poster board thickness kind of box. Um, and inside of it were all of these treasures in tiny plastic bags. And that would have been, I can't remember if those actually got released and got to us in 80 or 81, but I would have been like 9 to 10 at the time, which means I was also very into my tiny stuff, like accessories for all things. Barbie accessories, great. Star Wars action figure accessories, great. And it was one of those things where, to be fair, I was always a little bit of a hoardy child. Like I would keep all my allowance money and save it up and make a little pile and allocate it and be like, this is for an action figure spree. And I vaguely recall my brother kind of like wheeling and dealing on that of like, oh, if you put in a few more of your proof of purchases, then we could share this. And of course, I was a dumb kid, so I went for it. Today I'd be like, get your own. But oh, the joy of that thing coming was spectacular. Those little weird rubber accessories were like magic in a box.
I took a picture of that ad on the back of a card. I kept all my card backs too from action figures. But for the panel last year at San Diego, I definitely took a picture of the big old promo on the
Yeah.
back of one of the cards that had all those pieces. I kept all of mine. If you remember the Rebel transport ship, the big uh,
Yeah.
pill-looking ship
Yeah.
toy, it had a couple of seats in the cockpit, and then the the cargo holdish area was actually an action figure case, more or less.
And it had
Um,
slots on the side, right? Am I
not exterior. The interior was just like a compartmentalized tray, and you could fit, I forget how many figures in there. But
gotcha?
the cockpit area had lift up, like the whole console lifted up, not for any play purpose, it's just how you assembled it. But that area, kind of like a trunk for me, it fit those um, little battle pack accessory things perfectly, and that's where they stayed.
They were so good. That's some good stuff. Oh, action figure accessories. We've made it through our top five, right?
I'm about to, yeah, I'm about to
Yes.
do six. Yeah.
So now we have sixies ready to go.
Yep.
All right, hit me.
Um, still in the prequel era, the Republic gunship.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah.
Big, kind of like the Falcon, in that it's also a vehicle and a playset. Um, Lots of different spots to, do something with. Um, and we're married at this point, we're adults, but that was a cool design and a hefty, like good quality toy. I admit that I still played with that one. That made it into a couple of little play videos.
Listen, there's no shame in the playing with toys game. That's my
Yeah.
rule of thumb.
But you could also plus it with other stuff, like separately purchased. Like there's kind of an area in the back where you'd have to disassemble a speeder bike, or one of their swoop bikes or whatever the clone troopers had, but that could slot into the back. You
Yeah.
had to get an extra pilot figure because it was a pilot and co-pilot situation. Um, Usually you'd stand the Jedi in the main hold so they could be dropped off and get out onto the battlefield in the Geonosian arena, which will also come up again next, actually. Um,
Oh,
yeah, it was a good, well thought out toy. I liked it.
I love it. My next one is really a bunch of toys. And it is really two editions of the same thing because I can't choose. It's the concept that is my favorite. It's the Droid Factory Advent Calendar,
Ah,
which I probably talked about on a million different shows. But it's it looks like a Jawa sandcrawler, the box, and each day you get another piece of droid and you end up building multiple droids over the course of the month of December leading up to Christmas if you're doing it along that calendar spacing. Um this is one of the best ideas Disney has ever had, in my opinion, in terms of making toys. Like, it's so joyous and fun. And the funny thing is, I found myself really um uh trying to like figure out where in the world of seasonal droids specifically I needed to land because I didn't want to be like, I love the Halloween droids and I love these droids and I love all of them. The Halloween action figures and the Halloween droids, as we all know, very high on my love list.
yeah, they're honorable mention for me.
But there's something about that advent calendar setup of like, and I do it the proper way where I open one thing a day, unlike some people we know
Zing.
who just rapidly tear the whole box open at once, who I love, but you
He's
know.
talking about you. You know who you are.
One of our friends did that in front of me recently, and I almost lost my mind. It was like shocking. It was like seeing something horrific. But it makes the holiday season so delightful and special and full of a little gift each day, even on days when you're having a cruddy day when work sucks and is out of control or whatever, you can still be like, but look, I got a little gingerbread leg that will one day be part of a droid. And it's just a delight maker. So I think it's brilliant. Droid Factory Advent Calendar. There have been two so far. The first year was very popular and they sold out, but then they showed up on clearance and then they released the same set the next year, which was weird. And then this past holiday season, 2024, was the third year of it and they came out with a new one. So hopefully we don't have to wait another 2 years for another. Maybe they'll start doing a fresh one each year.
Yeah. And we were just talking how that's not necessarily your scale. You know, the Droid Depot,
Yeah.
RC droids,
Yeah, but I love all of
and
those seasonals.
you wouldn't really get in on building the Droid Factory at the tables with me. Um, but the Advent calendar is the same thing. Just
Yeah.
again, I think it's the way it's displayed, the way it's offered to you.
Yeah,
Also, I mean,
100%.
they're Christmas themed. They're repaints. There's extra little detailing stuff.
Yeah, the gonks look like gifts. I mean, who doesn't want that?
Yeah, they plussed it up.
It's adorable. Adorable. And this year, the new one had a little tiny Christmassy Dio in it, which was the cutest thing I've ever seen. And I was scared I might accidentally swallow it. It was so tiny.
Yeah, keep it away from the cats. So we're going on to number seven.
Mm-hmm.
For me, still a prequel, although I am not jumping to Revenge of the Sith. I am gonna stay with Attack of the Clones and say the Geonosian Arena monsters. And I'm talking about the Acklay in particular. Um,
That Acklay is so good.
they are such different. They're different than the transport animals like dewbacks and banthas that we're
Mm,
used to. We never got a good look at the old Dianoga until video games much later. Um, there's been very few like really wild Star Wars monsters. Like the dewbacks are great. We saw Rontos in the special edition. Um, but these were like, Ray Harryhausen monsters.
yeah.
And the accolade. Now, no slight at all to Banthas. I think the Bantha might be my favorite Star Wars critter. We have so many different versions of the Bantha plush and action figure. We even have a custom one that looks retro, like it's an old school Kenner version if they had done one back in 78. I love those, but for tonight's theme or this episode's theme, I will say the Acklay.
The Acklay's really good. The Acklay is, I think you're right, the best of those creatures. I mean, no shade to the Nexu. You know I love a kitty.
Mhm.
And the Reek is great, but the Acklay just is so unique in its design. Plus, it makes the most spectacular sounds. I mean, the toy doesn't, but you conjure it when you're playing. I'm surprised that you're basically saying Bantha is not on your list
Correct.
because you do love a Bantha.
He, uh, I call all of them Samantha. Um,
Yes.
Samantha the Bantha. She is forever in my heart. So I don't even have to list her anywhere. It's like default, like she's the best. Um,
Samantha.
yeah. Like there are 10 others that are favorites for this episode, but she's just by default the best.
I love it. I love it. Okay, I have another generalized one. I like how I play fast and loose with the rules.
That's fine.
Literally all the T-bows. And it's because he's probably my favorite Ewok. He looks a little gothy. He looks a little scary. But it's been fascinating to watch how his representation as an action figure has shifted over the years, right? The original little Kenner one is the cutest thing. Like those Kenner Ewoks are adorable. I love the simplicity of the sculpt and like the striping is never quite the right colors, but it's still super cute. I love those. But then I also like to compare that to like the more modern ones. I was just looking at today my 6-inch scale one. And I mean, that looks like a scary murder bear. That's like a legit murder bear. And so it's just interesting to me. Like, I feel like you could do almost the way people do the Evolution of Man series of art. You could do the Evolution of Tebow, and it would be quite delightful. And now I'm like, Brian,
T-shirt
let's make
design.
a shirt. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
As
Thinking the
it came out of
same
my
thing.
mouth, I'm like, I'm talking to the person who could make this happen. Um, so all the Tebows is I think we're on what, seven?
Yeah.
All the T-bows. All the T-bows. Do you have an 88-8 ready to go?
Yes. Uh, Gentle Giant,
Mm.
um, well known for their great busts, the mini busts that they do, uh, make a line of jumbo figures,
Oh, they're so good.
which make me laugh. Um, if listeners don't know of these, they have recreated in 1/6 scale, so 12 inches tall, extremely accurate versions of the early figures,
Yeah.
the retro figures. The detail, it's like they scanned an old figure and blew it up. The detail is still rudimentary. The paint scheme is still rudimentary. The earliest few that Gentle Giant did are my favorites because as we got to Empire and Jedi, the sculpts got a little better. So their jumbo versions look a little better. They look almost like what you might buy in the younger kids section of the toy aisle.
Right.
Um, so you're not buying a kid an expensive Star Wars toy to play with. You're buying them like the $5 one that they can ruin. Um, so the first round of Gentle Giant jumbo figures, I love just for their basic appearance. And I think, I don't know, it's either the blue snaggletooth that they did,
So good.
or if you remember the Death Star playset,
Yeah.
um, I have very few pictures of me as a kid with any Star Wars toys, but I do have a photo of me. I guess I was 9 years old, Christmas morning, with the Death Star playset. And I loved everything about it, but I loved the trash compactor monster, the Dianoga that came with it, and his little mound of foam pieces, foam trash pieces. Gentle
Yes.
Giant recreated that perfectly, including large blocks of foam trash.
Yeah.
And I think that might have been a convention exclusive, but when I saw that, it just it tickled me so much. So I would say either the Blue Snaggletooth, which was another one of those not everyone may know when the the toys were first offered. Um, they had misdesigned Snaggletooth um, and ended up coming out with a blue Snaggletooth, which then became very rare because they corrected it. But Gentle Giant did a jumbo version of him, uh, which I think was the first one I got, just because that was so funny. So either that or the Dianoga.
I did debate over putting the Gentle Giant original classic Leia on my list for the same
Mhm.
reason. I love it, but she didn't make it. Sorry, Leia, I love you. I also have the Bespin Leia, as you know, the Cloud City with the plastic cape that I love desperately. Um, but she didn't make the
Ooh,
list either.
side note, that classic Leia and classic Han made it onto our wedding cake. Yes.
Yes. Those were the you know what? We played fast and loose with timeline because we didn't do
Oh, is it Bespin Han?
but we put Bespin Han,
He was dressed
ESB Han
fancier,
on
yeah.
the figure because I liked his outfit better.
Me too.
So for our wedding, we have Han and Leia in not the right timeline together, but they were on our cake. As were the R2 and C3PO were there. Luke was there. Did we have Chewie on the cake? Surely we did.
Yeah, their wedding party,
It's been
yeah.
a long
But anyway,
time. It's been a long
continue
time.
with your number eight.
28 years ago. Um, okay, my number eight, we don't have it yet.
Oh.
This is where I'm like, it's a HasLab and it's the Cantina because that's the dream. That's the dream for a number of reasons, including the fact that we are finally getting official Tonica Sisters figures,
Yes.
which I am obsessed with.
Good
Just
point.
FYI, love of my life. You're gonna lose me for a solid week when that thing comes because I'm just gonna be taking pictures of it, staging little tableau, photographing the tableau and turning them into fabric prints. I have plans. I just I understand why we've never had it before. We've had other iterations of Cantina pieces, smaller play sets, but this is like the whole enchilada, the real deal. In my rich fantasy life, I want there to be pipes under the bar so we can see where Acmina sublet space to Cabe to live in on the down low. I know that won't be there, but in my head and in my heart it will.
You can
I just
customize it.
Right, we could build it on a we could set it up on like a plexiglass shelf and then underneath we can build out the subterranean part of the
Mhm.
cantina. I don't think I have ever been so excited for a HasLab. And like I love the HasLab stuff we've gotten. I was a little bit on tenterhooks for this one because like the sail barge, which was the first big Star Wars one, we kind of knew it was going to hit the finish line. And some of the others we knew the Rancor didn't fund. And then the Cantina, because it is really expensive, and I think because it's very big, it's hard to like buy in knowing you're going to have to find a place to put it.
Hmm.
I wasn't sure if it was going to fund, and it didn't really get there until the very end. And then it made it to what its first stretch goal, which was Greedo.
Hmm.
And that's it. Whereas some of the others, funded past the first stretch goal into several layers beyond or whatever. So I just want it because that's the dream space, right? Like if I could live in the cantina, I would, and we get pretty close in our little cantina here at home. But also just like knowing it almost didn't happen makes me love it all the more even before it gets here. I feel like that will be like the crown jewel of our Star Wars collection that I am the most obsessed with. I think it's become obvious in this list. Your proclivity leans more towards vehicles than mine. Like I love the ships, but I don't love them the way I love the cantina.
Hmm.
So that's my what is that, eighth?
Yeah, it's
Yes.
something just occurred to me recently. I'm having to keep track of pre-orders. That was something we brought up in our panel. Was how collecting has changed. You can't just walk into a store and walk out with a toy. Now it's all pre-orders months in advance.
Right.
But I was checking what all we have out there on pre-order, and I had forgotten that there is a modular Mos Eisley Streets playset.
Yeah.
And I realized, well, now I have to make sure there's space on the cantina display area, whatever, wherever that's going to be for this. Kind of like the Lego cantina came with some little outbuildings,
Yeah.
some little street side vendors and whatnot. On the exterior, we could also set up this Mos Eisley Streets playset alongside the cantina walls and make just kind of a mini Mos Eisley diorama.
Twist my arm.
Yeah,
That's like going, would you like to live in a world of cake? It's
yeah.
delicious all the time.
And
Great.
I've got over on the toy shelves behind me, kind of a uh haphazard cantina set up. There's some like you just mentioned the purchasable pieces. Like there were some two packs of figures that came with two stools and a slice of
Yeah.
R. And then there was 3D printable horseshoe shape to do the front end of the bar,
Right.
and some of the basic canisters and things that were in the middle. I don't know if they were decanters or part of the still or what. Um, and I've been debating if I just get rid of all that when the new cantina comes, or if we just have like somewhere else a giant like official Hasbro cantina set up. And I have this other one over here behind me.
Well, if we win the lottery, we can just add on to the house and make a cantina collectibles room.
Okay,
That's the plan. Come on, lottery win.
deal.
All right, what's your number nine, my love?
So, continuing on with the movies, Solo. Now, for a movie that only, and I'm air quoting, only made $100 million profit, they had a a robust toy selection, not just
Yeah,
vintage scale, but Black Series also. And then on up, there's a couple of Hot Toys also. Um, so it's hard to decide my favorite from that because there are several great figures in there. Not necessarily great vehicles. I think Han Speeder and a couple other things came out. Enfys Nest and her Cloud Rider bike. Either scale that came out. Well, actually, I don't know if there was a 1/6 scale version, but we got the Black Series and the vintage scale. That is a great looking toy. I love the design of Enfys. Um, Everything about that is a favorite. But also there was a special Lando figure in his yellow subtropical moon
Oh yeah.
sabak playing shirt, which is a fantastic figure. Um, but then also there's Han in his Vandor fur coat and goggles,
Yeah.
which is a great look. So those three, if I had to pick one, I think it would be Emphas, just because I love her design. That
Yeah.
helmet especially.
Oh, so good. The closest I think we got to a 1/6 scale Enfys is one I have up in the sewing room. It's the kind of really simplified. It's almost like a big action figure that I think might have been a Target exclusive. Do you know what I mean? It's more like a really basic doll than an actual like action figure with that level of articulation
Mm.
and detail. And I don't think it's even at 1/6 scale. It's like a 10-inch scale. It's a weird kind of off scale, but those are like inexpensive little ones that they made. And I know they made those of Kira Han and Enfys. And I don't remember if they did any others, but we do have that one. My ninth one is so silly, and it's actually a thing that I don't know if it's ever going to come back. It's the Snugglies Lothcat plush from Disney Parks. It's not the Lothcat, like the little toy one you can get in Galaxy's Edge that growls and stuff. It's a little It's not little. That's the thing. It's kind of a thicker, heavier plush. It's like made for hugging and sleeping with. And I am so
Oh yeah.
grateful that I snagged one when I did because they kind of vanished after that first run, never to be seen again. And it's such a good, like the perfect, if you like to hug a plush, and I do, I have so many plushes, it's not even funny. But like, it's the perfect thing if you want to just curl up around something and take a nap. I almost never do because full disclosure, I'm a drooly sleeper and I don't want to ruin it. But if they would put out another set of them, like another run of them, I would get a second one to drool on. The Snugglies Lothcat. Please, please come back. Please
Parents,
come
it's
back.
machine washable. Like
Right? I don't want to trash it, but I want it real bad. All right, what's your number 10, my love?
number 10. Um, do you want to do honorable mentions after number
Yes.
10? Okay.
Yes.
So if I stick to my store-bought rule, which means I won't mention my number 10, like my honest, true to my heart number 10, yet, we can come back to it. If I stick to my store-bought rule, I think it would be the vintage scale Galactic Star Cruiser droid figures,
Ooh,
SK and D3. They were sold separately.
yeah.
But those, they're fun designs because they're different looking droids, but the the meaningful experiences within which we bought these figures uh, put them on the list, definitely.
Yeah. Oh, I'm gonna get a little choked up. I love those figures too, for that
Um,
very reason.
for whoever didn't get to experience the Star Cruiser, and I'm gonna say yet, because I'm gonna stay optimistic until they tell us give up hope. Um, SK was a full-size droid that rolled around in the
An
ship with you,
astromech, yeah.
an astromech that was part of the story. D3 was on your cabin's screen. She was kind of like a Alexa. She's kind of like a helper. You could actually ask questions, she would answer. But she was like a computer animation.
Yeah, we
Uh,
never saw a physical one on the ship.
yeah, photoreal. But they did make a figure of her also.
Oh, so good. So good. Um, oh, Star Cruiser. Which kind of makes it into my honorable mentions, which I'll talk about in a minute. But my number 10 thing goes back to the episode 1 toys.
Mhm.
And it's the episode 1 Amidala travel gown doll.
Oh.
because I that whole travel gown series that they did, or not travel gown, the whole Amidala doll series that they did, like they had the basic ones that were kind of more like what you would associate with a Barbie, that were in like, cute, obviously themed, but not like fancy pants packaging. But then they did the ones that were her fancier dresses that got that beautiful arched window style packaging that was just incredibly pretty. And they did the Senate gown, they did the travel gown, and they did her purple travel gown when she's headed back to Naboo. Um they never did the pre-Senate gown for those because if they had, that would be my number one. But
Mm.
they did the travel gown, the black feather headdress one, um, that was amazing and beautiful, and I love it. And I've never taken it out of the box. And I always have a little bit because I like taking things out of the box, but with dolls like that, I feel like once I take them out of the box, they won't look as pristine and pretty, and I will somehow ruin them. So I'm always on the lookout for an unloved one that is, shows up at a toy show or something. And at some point I'll grab one and display it, refurbish it if it needs it, whatever. I have to be careful and judicious with plans like that, right? Like as Brian knows, I have a problem of acquiring things that need attention, and then they sit there not getting attention, just taking up space. And I have like a vintage Princess Leia doll. I have two. I have one that's in great shape that I got secondhand, but had been lovingly restored by the person I purchased it from. And then I have one that is a little bit of a mess, and I have plans for her, but I haven't enacted those yet. So listen, we got a lot of projects over here. But that is my 10th one. So now I think we're ready for a quick run through honorable mentions.
Okay, me
I just
first?
have two.
Okay.
So you can blaze through all of yours, or we can alternate, whichever you prefer.
Um, what would have been on my favorites if I hadn't stuck to my rule? It's not meant to be a sentimental or sad making thing, but it would be the wooden play sets that I made as a kid with my dad.
Yeah.
Um, at the time, my best friend and I were, when we would play Star Wars, we were making up stories. We weren't just like running around pew pew pew. Uh, and the figures, the characters needed somewhere to be in our stories, and Kenner hadn't really made like a lot of world building toys. So I ended up, my dad had a workshop. I ended up making a lot myself. I made a command base, I made a medical sick bay, a barracks, a garage. Han and Chewie were still trying to figure out how they could be useful in the rebellion, so they needed a place to kind of be. They weren't always working on the Falcon, so I made a workshop for them that had a lot of broken pieces from older Star Wars toys in like the corner, but they had a workbench and stuff. And I still have these things are like what, 40 something years old at this point. I still have them and they have a special place on my toy shelves
Yeah.
behind me. Um, they were blocky wood, they had magic marker details, but I we played with them a lot. I still love them. So I they would definitely be in the favorites list.
I love it. I love it. They're so cute and they're so sweet. I love having them around because it's like a connection to the little Brian that I didn't get to know. So it's very sweet. Um, did you have others on
I
your
did.
honorable mention?
We talked about the Disney parks figures. They put out a lot of unique toys and vehicles like the Star Tours
Oh,
ships, which like the first one that we got is amazing. It's got lights and sounds and stuff, but the new one that just came out, there's
it's
an actual
bonkers.
screen inside of it that plays vintage ride footage, which is mind-blowing. Um, then they also had like even before Disney bought Lucasfilm, they had Disney characters as Star Wars characters. They had Muppet characters as Star Wars characters. There's
Yes.
a lot in that line that are really fun. The Droid Factory had a lot, I mentioned earlier, a lot of the multi-packs and one-off stuff. They had event-related droids. They still are doing Christmas and Halloween and Pride, and there's convention exclusive droids, which are great. I don't have a completist mindset. We also don't have the space for all of these, but I'm glad we have. I'm glad we were able to grab what we were able to grab of these kind of. I don't know if they were necessarily like one time only. I mean, like I said, they are still doing the Christmas and Halloween and Pride figures. But like the Muppet stuff, I don't know if we'll ever get anything like that again.
Yeah.
Um, Disney and Star Wars, they're still kind of redoing that year after year. We've got Star Wars weekends and Season of the Force and stuff like that. So I think there will always be Star Wars toys associated with that that'll be kind of uniquely Disney slash Star Wars.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, those are honorable mentions.
Yeah.
We've got a few of those. I like
That
them.
Star Speeder is like that's a brain breaker. It's so
Yeah.
good. It's so good I can't believe it didn't make my list actually.
Is it the
But
Star Speeder 1000 and 3000? Is that right? Is that
I
what they made?
I don't was it 6,000? Why do I think it's 6,000? Don't trust me. Um were those all of your
Yes.
HMs?
Yes.
I just have two, but one is a very general category. So one of them is the candy corn Lothcat plush that they put out this past year. Because I just love it. And I love Lothcats, and we don't get enough Lothcats. And I will say this. That is the cutest iteration of a Lothcat face I think we've gotten in a plush. No shade to the ones from Celebration, but they aren't as cute as the candy corn Lothcat. They just really nailed the face. Lothcats have a unique face shape. If you're accurate to the animation, it doesn't always look quite right in the 3D world. But that one is that's a chef's kiss. My last honorable mention, and really this is like huge, and it is really the honorable mention is the fans because it's all of the cool customs that people make because we have gotten to a point where we recognize no, we're not ever going to get all the figures that we want. And like, I have an absolutely beautiful custom Wani that I had made that, like, no, but they were not going to make a Wani action figure for Star Cruiser, but I wanted it really bad because she's my favorite character on that experience. And she's one of my favorite characters in Star Wars because she's a beautiful Rhodian and I have a relationship with Wani. You know what I mean? Like we were friends on that ship. Um, but there are so many people doing really, really beautiful custom sculpts. There are people coming up with really beautiful 3D print files with like ways to even mod all of their stuff that I am in love with the way fandom has just taken their own creativity and filled all the gaps we know we're never going to get from a commercial licensed producer. And it is one of those things I know we have all been frustrated with like, oh, there's a new line you just announced. Really? We're going to get another Jedi Luke and the classic Leia. Like I love those characters, but like we've gotten a
Yeah.
lot of them.
And we understand that there's thankfully, new fans being made all the time. So
100%.
they don't have access to the old toys. So it's great that they're getting new toys.
Yeah, 100%. But every decision that is a repeat character like that means that that's a new character that's never going to get a figure. So I just want to shout out to everybody out there that's making custom figures, that's modding figures to be their own thing, that's making completely new characters that aren't in any property that are just your own creations. I love all of that. I love that creativity. I think that's really one of the things that carries Star Wars through all of its various dark moments in terms of like the fandom being messy and whatnot. It's like I can always remember that there is a person out there somewhere figuring out how to make their own custom version of their favorite figure or their favorite droid or their favorite anything, and they are running with it and engaging with Star Wars in a way that is making the world full of more beautiful and interesting things. So thank you to everyone that does that.
Thank you. I echo that. Thank you.
And also because in some of those cases, right, that means that people like us, if you have a 3D printer and you can get your hands on files, you can print play sets that are also never going to get made, and have, your own whole other. I mean, there are people that do the most beautiful diorama play sets that just blow my mind. So, that's my big fat, very much full of love and honorable mention is all of the custom stuff that people make. Even if they're just making it for themselves, I don't necessarily mean that they're making something to sell. I just mean like they are showing other fans what you can do with a little bit of gumption and your creativity. And I think that's as inspiring as anything we've seen in any of the movies. I love it so much. So thank you. Brian, I've kept you for over an hour.
The time has flown, my dear.
Indeed, when you're talking about toys, it's easy peasy.
We've had a lovely hyperspace journey.
We have. I almost guarantee that we will wrap this up, and then we are in different rooms right now as we record, but that we will end up like in the living room talking about the toys we should have talked about, because we do talk about toys a lot at our house.
I mean, yeah, granted, we had to establish rules for this because we couldn't just narrow it down,
Yeah.
because we have such a history with the toys.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for spending this time with me, Mr. Fry.
Thank you for the invitation.
Do you want to tell people where they can find you if they want to talk to you about toys?
Just half moth on blue sky.
There you go. Easy peasy. You can find me on Instagram as SurlyGirly5 and as Holly Fry on Blue Sky. You can, of course, find Stuff You Missed in History Class as Missed in History and Criminalia, #Criminalia.
Don't forget the Criminalia Cocktails book, Killer Cocktails, out on shelves now or wherever you might buy books online.
I was honestly about to do it.
Okay.
Brian gets on me because I don't promote stuff enough, but I'm getting better. Also, if
Do it again.
if you are a History Channel person on Friday evenings, I think still you can catch me on The Unbelievable with Dan Aykroyd. I'm one of those random talking heads that discusses weird history. Brian Young can be found at swankmatron.com, and he's Swankmatron, I think, across all social media, and our wonderful, much beloved, and a person I miss and haven't talked to enough recently, super producer Mike Pilot is at the mic, and
Yay, Mike.
I'm so lucky to have so many fun people to talk about Star Wars with. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us for episode 576 of Full of Sith. The Force will be with you always.
Thank you.
Sir, if you'll not be meeting me, I'll close down for a while.